My name is James, and I'm here to talk about your first month being laid off as an associate game designer. Why do I get to talk about this? Well, back in February, I was laid off as part of a group from Iron Galaxy Studios. Um, and as an associate game designer, I found myself thrust into the market. Very much, this is a video about my experience after the layoff. No way a comment on the circumstances or what was happening at the company. I'm making this video because it's a very turbulent time, and I really want to talk about what worked for me, what I went through, and what I could have done better. So either if you find yourself in a similar situation, or you're entering the game development industry as an associate game designer or as an associate overall, you can prepare yourself just in case, to be practical for these type of things that unfortunately do happen from time to time in the industry. Let's talk about the first day. So coming in the moment after being laid off, like, immediate emotional reaction is, confusion, disbelief, and very much like connection. These things happen very quickly, whatever circumstances may happen. You've found yourself with a large chunk of your time and chunk of your life that has basically been ousted from your life. 40 hours a week combined with friends, work, purpose, routine that is now gone. Leaving with it a big absence and a large kind of part of connection that was part of your day-to-day now completely broken. On that first day, the first priority I would suggest is establishing a second channel of communication with your coworkers. These were people that, especially, you've been working with in the day-to-day, for months, if not years. Like, you want to establish a way to talk or reconnect with these people outside the regular workplace channels. Try to connect with the other people who are affected. The big thing about a layoff is that you're not alone. There's a lot of other people in their own circumstances who are going through the same thing at the same time. And you can help take care of yourself and share in kind of emotions and things if you kind of connect and form a community to take care of each other. This first day, it's rough. It sucks. There's only really so much you can practically do. Just focus on, once you kind of have a little bit of connection up and running, focus on self-care. Don't go too hard on yourself. You probably won't be able to, plan out your emotions. You can't really get them out of the way, per se, on this, first day. But, take it easy on yourself and, get yourself in a spot, go out to dinner, get to bed at an early time, do something that's, enjoyable and healing for you to get yourself ready for the days to come. The first week. So, once again, the biggest thing is, focus on regaining contact with coworkers and kind of building that lost community. This was 40 hours of your life that was being taken up and is now gone. Connect with friends, lean on them, hang out, and try to kind of fill that space and take care of yourself socially. Next off, making your layoff public. Don't know you're affected unless you say, and people want to help. So these are the two posts I did on LinkedIn. You can see that the one on the left was just my direct open for work, talking I was impacted by the layoffs, editing the kind of generic LinkedIn template, that what roles I'm looking for, and that I'm willing to relocate. That post got 40 reposts, and then it got 5,000 impressions on it from people sharing it around and showing it. The one on the right, I also did a retweet off of my company's post about the layoff that got an additional 2,000 impressions as well as more retweets. This is about putting yourself up there and making yourself available and open to any opportunities that may come your way, showing that, you haven't impacted and you're looking for work. Especially because this is not an uncommon occurrence. There's lots of people who either have experienced their own layoff or know someone who has. So everyone is very open in the game development space to, reposting, sharing things around. Even if they don't have something directly to offer, maybe give yourself the opportunity for them to share your stuff, to put it in front of someone who might have something to offer you. First week, there's different managerial things you're going to take care of. You're going to update your resume, your portfolio, and your LinkedIn. Get your most recent work that you can publicly show onto those platforms, so you can get up and running and start applying to jobs with your best foot forward and your most recent work history. You're going to handle a lot of technical things like any severance or separation agreements. You're going to try to handle insurance, whether you're going to maybe stick with your current plan and pay out of pocket, or you're going to kind of go on the market to try to get insurance, file for unemployment, and just handle kind of those kind of more managerial tasks to kind of get yourself, up and running. This week, I would also reach out to coworkers for referrals, connections, and leads. Especially if you did a good job at your present work. You were well liked, your work was well regarded. Especially in this early part, people are going to be open to helping out as they can. One of the easiest ways for people to help out is writing you a referral for future work. So I reached out to a lot of my past coworkers, managers, other designers I worked with at Iron Galaxy. They all were very kind to give me very nice referrals, talking about the work I did. That, going forward from a layoff, especially if you can't show specific work you did publicly, this is a great marker in terms of character to say hey, no, this person was, while they were around at the company for the past months or years, they were doing great work and they were a pleasure to work with. You should really consider picking them up again. But the biggest thing, especially about these type of connections, people will have a lot of sympathy for you, especially if you're an associate, for being affected by the layout. But everyone has their own lives. Everyone has stuff they have to get back to. There's a timer on that sympathy and how long it's going to last. So I would recommend getting on and even if it feels emotionally difficult, I know it did for me, to reach out and make these asks to people. Do it now while the timing is still fresh, and people have the bandwidth to kind of be available for you. Additionally, especially with these large public layoffs where a company is publicly announcing it, especially in the game dev space, these things get thrown around, and usually on LinkedIn, other people will step up and kind of offer opportunities. Now, these might not be direct opportunities. They might not be opportunities directly available. They might just be sympathy from other developers in the industry. But people will leave comments and, express their condolences. So this was under the Iron Galaxy company post. A few different recruiters and individuals from the industry expressing their condolences, saying, hey, please reach out, or, forward if they have any opportunities. Odds are you're not going to, especially as an associate, you're not going to get a job off of this. But these are people who've expressed a desire and that they're open to help. And there's a lot of different ways people can help, whether that be, LinkedIn and resume feedback, whether that be informational interviews or, connecting you to someone else. There's a lot of lower risk things that you can leverage. But again, it's really about striking while the iron is hot send out like cold messages to the people who've expressed a willingness to help and take the opportunity while it's still on the table. So then you can at least put yourself in the best position to get up and running for whatever future opportunities come down the pipeline. The last thing is kind of do an honest financial review. It sucks, and honestly, like, it's very uncomfortable to like have a practical, hard look at your finances, but you have to keep yourself safe. This is a survey from Bankrate that came out in May 2025, kind of saying that like between 54 to 70% of people ages like 18 to 28 have less than 3 months savings saved up to cover expenses. This is a look at my own finances where like I had probably a bandwidth of maybe like 5 to 6 months. If unemployment came in and I started working part-time, I could probably stretch that out to like 8-10 months. But like after that part, like I'm in the red. So not being in the dark about how long you can safely, especially if you moved out to take a job, how long you can safely remain independent and support yourself without a full-time position, like, is really important to know. And, if there's stuff you need to adjust, like, I cut all of my subscriptions, and I basically went down to a grocery bill of, like, $25 a week, where I was basically living off of, like, pasta and ground turkey and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches to try and just maximize as much bandwidth as possible before I got into like a dark zone where I would need to like think about exiting my lease and like heading home. Important to know where you stand, especially so you can have that out of your mind, as uncomfortable as it will be, so you can then focus on the next step, which is actually applying and putting your energy towards getting a new opportunity. Talking about week 2, so this is where, if not already in week 1, this is where you're going to start getting ramped up and applying. You've got your referrals, you've got some maybe connections or leads off of your LinkedIn post, your resume and your portfolio is updated as best as you can. It's time to start applying for jobs. And you have entered the application maelstrom, you've got set on your boat. You're as provisioned as you can be, and you set sail on the high seas with starry glints in your eyes. At this point, enjoy the well-done backlog of open jobs that have been posted for the past, weeks to months before your layoff happened. Start making a spreadsheet to track your different applications. This is a look at mine where I had the job title, I had my status of when I applied, I had the date I put the job into the spreadsheet, and then I had a tracker for basically how old the job was, and do I have some type of connection, friend of a friend, or someone who can maybe refer me to the position. Enjoy that backlog of all the jobs that are already posted. Even though there's a full kind of list there, like, really prioritize new listings. Those should be top of the stack, and then basically work your way backwards every time going back up if something new gets posted. The next thing, though, while you're kind of getting in, you're applying the jobs, like, try to rebuild some type of routine. Like, again, a job is 40 hours of your life. Even if it's not the only thing that you do as part of your weekly routine, it is still like a big thing that you orient your life around. So trying to rebuild that routine as best you can, get into some type of momentum, like, avoids you from just kind of becoming a slug. So, how, my routine ran out is like, I'd wake up in the morning, I'd go for a morning run, I would, play a new game for maybe an hour or two. I would then work on job applications and cover letters for a couple hours. I then go work on a Unreal portfolio piece, and then I would go like work out and go uh, see friends or hang out with friends online in the evening. So like this is me, I went and ran a 5K just to like get my mind off of what the hell was going on and do something else, right? Besides just kind of being home and being a slug. Spending time with friends is really great for avoiding just feeling trapped in your circumstances, especially after you cut your expenses back and you're not spending money on like going out. Friends can also be there to help you with meals. They can take you out to eat. They can do things to make you feel involved and alive while not spending money out of your own pocket. So month one, it's all about finding a new normal. Getting a routine going and kind of readjusting from the whiplash of losing your job. By week two, you'll probably be out of the backlog of job listings. And it's going to become really important to kind of focus on quality and personalization over quantity, especially in the game industry where, for art-based positions, or if you're maybe someone who has a specific subdiscipline, like level design or narrative design, or in my case, like technical design, you probably aren't going to see a new job you can apply for every day. Week 3 is the earliest you're going to be hearing back about interviews. And, from there, like, there's just no way you're getting hired in this first month, even in the best of circumstances. Get yourself prepared, reach out to and reactivate your network, talk to classmates, talk to university and company alumni. The benefit of working at a company as an associate is you have a brand new alumni base of ex-employees from your company you now have access to. So start reaching out. You still have that timer for sympathy, especially being an associate where people will help you. They will give you assistance. Leverage it to get informational interviews, get feedback, bank on being young and full of hope and in a bad situation. Like this is me kind of reaching out to a few different company alumni about kind of different jobs I saw, who were alumni of Iron Galaxy, and kind of saying like, hey, can I ask you some questions about your job or this role? Following up on people from that initial post that said like they'd be open to giving help. This one in the center here, like I followed up beginning of February and then the 2nd of February and then another week after that, and it took me 3 weeks to actually get a response. But then they were willing to still give time and give feedback and give me a review of my resume and my portfolio and help out, and in the circumstance, like one on the right, I sent a reach out to someone saying like an ex alumni of MSU, and I didn't get a response, and you're not going to get a response from everybody. Not it's people giving goodwill when they have the time, if they have the time. Be gracious for any help other people are willing to give you. Be respectful and respect people's time. Last off, adjust your finances and your lifestyle. Be practical. It doesn't feel good, but the biggest thing is being safe. And the biggest benefit, especially if you're an associate and you have, a good relationship with your family, you can move back home. And that's what I ended up doing on the left, trying to look cool while crying under my eyes with, my apartment and everything packed up behind me. I cut my lease. I drove back from Florida to Michigan, moved back into the basement with my parents, like a classic mid-20s adult. I swallowed my pride. I started running DoorDash. I cut my expenses, but because I cut my expenses, I could spend the money I would have spent on rent, I could spend that on opportunities and trying to get myself back out there. So, on the right, I spent a little bit of money that I would have spent on rent, and I went to GDC. I didn't get a job directly from GDC, but I had the flexibility and the opportunity to do so because I made a hard choice and I was realistic about my finances. Now, you may be in a better financial position to me. You may be in a more smart, bigger brain, and saved more, and built a bigger emergency fund pre-layoff, so you could sustain your life for longer. I didn't, so if you have about as much money as kind of I have here, or if you have less, like, I would just be really realistic and be safe. You're gonna have good days and you're gonna have bad days. I know, like, I made the mistake of like trying to like schedule my emotions, trying to like, okay, now I will enter my Zen state, and I will grieve, and I will let the emotions wash over me, and then I will be done. That didn't happen. The emotions, took like a week and a half before like I actually had like a really bad day, where I didn't have a lot of energy, and I probably didn't get a lot of stuff done. But you know, respect that's part of the process. You know, losing a job can be a lot like losing, a loved one or a close personal friend, where like a big part of your purpose in your life is just kind of taken off your plate in a moment. So really, take care of yourself and, be kind throughout the process. What I did well, I want to say, like, big thing I did well, even though a layoff happened, I still really got a lot of benefit from doing as good a job as I did at my in my position while I was at the company. People would not have been as willing to offer referrals, to connect me to other people in their network, to give me, reviews of my resume, if I had been a bad worker. Um, while I was working, I kept notes about, general lessons learned while being employed, where, in the circumstances of not having a lot of work to share, I did have something I could kind of use as like proxy points in my portfolio. Talking about, helping out with the QA team, talking about like stuff I learned about documentation, general stuff. Next, like jumping on the initial opportunities, a lot of those initial things where I jumped on while the sympathy was still hot. I was able to get good feedback on resume. I was able to meet connections that were then able to introduce me to other people. That gave me information about jobs that I didn't get hired from, but like I got farther in the hiring process than I otherwise would have if I didn't jump on that. I stayed physically active and kept moving, didn't just let myself sit in my apartment and be very sad. And I cut costs completely aggressively to, stay safe. What would I have changed? I would have done a better job of maintaining my network before the layoff. I'm sure a lot of people say this. But, if you only come to somebody in the bad times when you need something, they're less likely to help you than if you stay in contact and you check in and are invested in their success in their lives. There are people in my network that maybe could have been a benefit to me and helped me find a job, but like I let those connections fade away and I didn't keep up. So it would have been insanely rude for me to reach out and ask them for help. And they would have been a lot less likely to help me than if I had stayed in contact and, kept, maintained my network while I was still working at my job. If I'd saved a larger emergency fund, the larger emergency fund you have, just the more of a runway you have to stretch things out before things become dangerous, before things become scary. And the biggest benefit of, being an associate is you're a lot less likely to have dependents You're a lot less likely to have things like a mortgage. You can have a shitty car. If you don't put these like big things on your plate, like debt, like a car payment, um, then that's just more money you can hold to keep yourself safe. So I would have probably prioritized that more coming out of college and having a bigger bank to pull from in case of emergency. And then I would have probably spent more time building friendships locally outside of work. A lot of my friends while working at Iron Galaxy were just people from college and high school that I knew online. And definitely when the largest in-person part of my life, disappeared with my job, I really felt pretty alone in not having people in person that I could like pull on and have in-person support. So if you spend time, even if you don't see your first job as an associate as the end all job. Maybe it's something you are thinking about maybe jumping off of in like 3 to 5 years. Still investing time in like local relationships that maybe are only for this period or this season of your life, like still can be a really big benefit, especially if there's something going on in your life that you need emotional support for. And that's all I've got. I really hope that if you're an associate and for some reason you either find yourself in a position where you're going to be laid off, I hopefully like this gives you a tool and gives you some support and helps you feel maybe a little less alone, and that other people have also gone through this.